Okay, in this tutorial we're going to be looking at how to create a pipe that flows around the edge of this room, and then also look at how to create the connections for the pipe to the wall. So you can see here we've got our white box section, and it's very important that as we've discussed in previous tutorials, you make sure you're working using your grid. As we can see here, the top of this model lines up kind of perfectly with our grid squares. So if we just go to our top view, you can see that quite clearly there, how this lines up perfectly. And to go to wireframe like so. So in order to create a pipe, we're going to be using the curves tool. So if you just come over here to the curves menu, and we're going to use the Bezier curve tool because we're going to have curved piping in each corner. Again, we're going to use our grid, but we're just going to make a few amendments to the grid here. So if we just right click on your grid and go to grid options, all we're going to do is make sure we've got a second subdivision. Then we're going to hit apply. The reason we need that second subdivision is we're going to use these grid points to snap to. Now this model was blue and these grid lines are blue, so I'm actually going to change this colour to, that's a bit too much, that. Maybe something like that will do. What you want is just something that you can see these lines but also make out the edge of your model. You could of course use the bonus tools. I've just moved to a new computer so I don't have them installed, but you could use that to X-ray there. So I could press 5 and use that as an X-ray, and that makes it a bit easier, especially if I have that wireframe mode turned on as well. Okay, so with your grid set up properly, if we just click this tool here, I'm just going to quickly run through it just to show you what I mean. And we might as well leave the grid off for this, so just to show you how this is going to work. If I click a point to make one with the left mouse button, and then click again, and again, and so on, and then press W to go to move mode. If you right click on this line and go to control vertex, then you can select these and move these around like normal. But if you hold shift and right click on a control vertex, you can go to Bezier, and if you select Bezier, that gives you these handles which you can now manipulate. And they're what we're going to use to, sorry about that, they're what we're going to use to make our curved areas for here. So just delete that one out. If I'll show you what I mean. If I make a line there, for each corner we're going to want to have 3 points, like so. I'm in the wrong tool. So back to this tool, click once, and like that, hit enter. And now if I right click and go to control vertex, I can manipulate this, which will be our corner, and if I hold shift to right click and go to Bezier, I can actually then tweak these handles and get a nice curve. We're going to use that to create our curved water pipe, or curved kind of pipe that's inside our walls. So if we turn the grid back on, go to Bezier mode here, we're going to start off in this corner here. So remember, if you hold X, that will snap to the grid, and then click on this point, and then there, and there, and then work our way around our model. So you can see why the grid is so important here, because we get perfectly straight lines. Now notice how I've got 1 point, then 1 point here, and then 1 point here for each corner, so I can pull that in and get that nice curve. Make sure you have that on every single corner. So this one's a bit more tricky, but click to there, and you can see I've got 2 grid squares, so 1, 2 to there. And I'm always making sure I've got 1 grid square between my walls. Now obviously you're thinking, well, if I do make a mistake I can come in and just add another point in, but it doesn't seem to like you doing that. It's much better if you just get your grid points, sorry, get your curve points right straight away. Seems to have some problems dealing with points that you've added in. I'm not really sure why, but at the moment I think it's definitely best just to get your line right from the start. Now if I click on this point, that's just going to end this curve. So it can actually be better to hold X and say click just out here, and that will go to there. Now if we go to W, press W and go to move mode, we've got a couple of options. We can either just model this, turn off the grid, we can either just model this and then connect these together in polygon mode, or we can, so I'm just going to things up like that, go to control vertex mode, and using X should be able to snap that on, to turn the grid back on, like so. Yeah, we'll probably do it like that. So notice how I don't need to make any additions to this line, and it definitely seems to be best to kind of work in that way. If I figure out a way of adding the points in so that the pipe can still be created properly, I will update this tutorial, but for now it's best just to get your curve right from the start. So I've got 1, 2, 3 on each corner. So to create the corners, if we just hold shift and left drag to select each of our corner pieces, and then hold shift and right click and go to Bezier, then you can select your handles and select your middle point and drag these in just to make that nice corner on each one. What you can actually do, which is probably a little bit easier, if we to make it a bit more precise, if you drag it to where you want it to be and then hold shift, right click and go to corner and then go back to Bezier, it will redo that Bezier for you, and that can sometimes be a bit more accurate. So obviously I'm doing a little bit of this by eye, and that isn't always the best way to do things. Okay, so with those now edited, and by the way, one more thing, if I right click out here I can go to curve point, control vertex, but if I don't click on the actual spline I just get these two options here. So you need to click on the actual spline itself in order to your... Okay, so with our line now complete, we can start making the actual pipe that follows this line. So to do this, make sure you're in the rendering tab. You can get to this also by if you hold H and left click, hold H and right click. Okay, well you can't do that, but if you just go to your rendering tab here and then go to paint effects with the line selected and go to attach brush to curves. This will now give you a load more extra options in your attribute editor. So you can't see it yet, but the pipe is actually now following this. We just need to increase it in size. So if we come over to brush 10, we'll set our global scale to around 20 and then increase our brush width until we've got this to the size we're happy with. So you're probably best off doing this in perspective view and use zoom in highlight mode. Now it's very important here to make sure you keep this line. We're going to need this later, so I might just use Control and D to duplicate it and stick a copy over here, because we're going to need that later for doing our connecting segments. So if we look at our model here, we can see it's quite high detail in terms of segments that move along it, but not very high detail in terms of points around the cylinder here. So we can amend that. First of all, if we come over to our stroke shape and set down the density, you can tweak it like that until we're about right. And if we come over to brush here, we can set in our mesh tab, we can set our tube sections to 8. And you can increase that if you want. If you want something like 12, then that's fine as well. Now you'll notice that the model is completely black at the moment. And that's because this isn't actually a polygon mesh at the moment. This is still a render effect. So we need to actually convert this into geometry. So making sure you're completely happy with your mesh density, so you can play around with this bit until it's completely right. Once you're happy with that, if you come over to modify, convert, and then you can use paint effects to polygons, but make sure you click on this options box and tick on quad output, because otherwise it will triangulate the mesh. So we'll just hit apply, and we can drag this one off here, and this is our old paint effect here, so we should be able to delete that one out, select our new one here and do edit, delete all by type, history, and then we can actually snap it back into place using X, so that again our grid snap comes in handy there. Okay, so if we then just apply a generic shader to it, such as Lambert 1, you can see now we've got our pipe that follows the trajectory of the walls. Now another useful thing about this tool, if we come over to polygons and unwrap, you'll see that the model has actually been unwrapped really well. This is exactly the unwrap we want for it. We can now make a tiling map and have that applied to this entire model. So it's great, the model's already unwrapped for you. That's really, really useful. So at the moment though, this isn't connected to the wall. So the next thing we're going to do is connect this to the wall. I'm just going to hide my cameras, they're annoying me a bit there. So this is why we needed to keep this shape here. So if we make a cylinder first, and you'll notice how when I make a cylinder, I just click there and it appears in the centre here. And also it's a nice kind of big size. So I'll just show you what I did to do that. If I come over to the Create tab, Polygons Primitives, and click on the cylinder options, I've actually set my radius and my height to be 100 and 200. I think by default they are 1 and 2. So if you hit apply, you'll see how small the model is, because it's only 1 centimetre by 2 centimetres. And if you do want that interactive creation, you just tick this off and then it will just generate the model there. Okay, so we are going to use discrete rotate. We're going to set this to say 15 degrees. So I'm just going to turn that off because I like to hold J and rotate it like that. So we will rotate that 90 degrees as well, or not. Messing up basic rotation, not very impressive. And we'll also make sure we've got 16 segments, so this matches entirely to our model here. So we'll drag this over to our model. And what we could do is actually use the grid again to make sure that this sits directly where it should. So use X-ray mode here, snap to grid, and just snap this to one of these points. So then we know that the only thing we need to sort out is the height of it to get it matching perfectly. So I'm on discrete scale, so turn that off, and then we can just scale this down and get this to match. So I'm going to go nice big kind of chunky cross section here. Then we're going to use edge mode, insert edge loop tool. We're going to use equal multiplier and put 2 in there to make sure that it is the exact distance apart. And then we're going to extrude these faces outward. And again, we're going to scale mode, and if we turn on discrete scale, you can just scale it in until it's completely flat, and then poke this through our wall here. So I might just ramp this up slightly, give it a slight diagonal, like so. And you might want to try and get it just about flush with the wall, so when it comes to texture painting you can paint some kind of dirt or rust or whatever on there, and that'll match up. Obviously the one I'm doing here is quite basic really, like you could. I'd expect you guys to do something a little bit more kind of complex, but just for this demo, doing something quite kind of basic. Okay, so that's our little model made there. And what we'll want to do on this is make sure we delete our history and freeze transformations. So freeze transformations just means that all of your rotate and translate and scale are reset back to 0 or back to the standard. And that's really useful for just kind of basically it resets the model. And then what we'll need to do is just select our spline here, and we'll just drag that up to there. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to do this in two ways. The first way is using just normal Maya, which is a little bit longer but does do the job. And the second way is to use this script here, which is called duplicate a long path. Now it's completely free, but it just has a lot more functionality than Maya's kind of default tool. So you can download it for free, and to install it has your instructions here. Just like we did last week with Nightshade, you copy it into your scripts folder, restart Maya, then in your command line you can just put this little instruction into here. Now you can either hit enter and that will generate the tool, or you can select it and drag it up to here, and that will also generate it. So kind of easy just to have it up here. But we're going to leave that for now because that is an easier way, but just in case you guys can't install at home, I want to show you like the normal way of doing it. Okay, so the first thing to do is to set your timeline to use 100 frames down there. And then what we do is we select our object and our path, and I'm just going to hide unselected. So remember, to get to that you can go to display, hide unselected objects, but I'm just going to use my button over here and turn off the grid. Okay, so now what we do is we go to the animation toolbar and then go to animate and then go to motion path, attach to motion path, but make sure you select the options. So we're going to use a time slider here, and then what we'll do is we'll select our object and our path and hit apply. And now that moves our model, and now if you slide up the time slider you can see the model now follows that. Okay, but at the moment it's not got the right rotation on it, so what we want to do is go to our attribute edit and just set some of our things here. So I'm going to slide this on a few frames because it seems to work better like that. Somehow it's picked up a checker material as well, so I'm just going to stick that on too. No, seems to just want to use that anyway. So we'll turn off our texture display here. So what we can do is actually set our front twist here and get this so it's facing the right way. There we go. Now we can see that's facing the right way, so if we just unhide all, select our spline and move this so it's in the right position, like so. And there we go. And we're going to select that and do hide unselected objects again. And now the way we work is, if we just stick that back to about where we want our first one to be. If we come to edit, duplicate special, go to the options and make sure that you have instance selected and all of these back to the default. So you can just do reset settings and set that to instance. And now if you hit apply and then wind this on to where you want your next one to be, select it again and then just hit apply and then wind this on again until you want your next one and hit apply and you just keep going around your model. So notice how I'm thinking about where I actually put them. And the annoying thing is you have to make sure you reselect this object before you hit apply, because if you don't, you're going to just keep selecting these. So select that one, apply, select that, and obviously you can use G just to redo that if you want, just to redo last command. I can make it a bit quicker. And just hit G, and whoops, and there we go, we've got all our models now in place. So if you want to, you can actually now either keep this one in and use it as one of the things, or just delete it out, like so. Okay, so now obviously these are all instant, so if we tweak one, it will affect them all, which is really useful. And also we've also got them in exactly the place that we want them to be. Now if you've got this display here, you can turn that off really easily just by selecting all of those models. And normally you just use the outliner for this, and just do display, transform display, and turn off local rotation axis, and you'll have that back. Okay, so now we have a pipe and we have it displaying. Now we have actually some nice holders to make it look like it's actually attached to the wall. Okay, so what about we using this script? Because obviously you have that slight annoyance and you have to go around and pick each one like so. So if we just select all of those, and except for that one, delete those out, go back to our original one here, and again, so we've got translate there, we'll just do freeze transformations, and what we can do next is run our script, just either just down here and just hit enter, or you can use the button that you've made up here. Now you can set the quantity here, and what you need to do is set your object up here, which is the one we've got selected already, so that's a bonus, so let's select it like so. And then we'll need to select the actual line itself. Again, this is much easier if you have your outliner open, and we'll set that to curve. And if you just hit refresh, that will make them all like so. So obviously our rotation isn't right here, so I'm just going to reset mine completely. And then if you toggle the sliders up and down, you can start to get a rough idea of where that should actually be. And maybe we'll increase the amount as well. And again, that's kind of done it spot on. For some reason, I don't know why, but it hasn't done it right on that one. That's quite odd. It normally does just do that right. I think it's because there's a slight error in the model on that one, or it might be because there's just too many kind of going around. So we'll just tweak that around and move that into place, like so. And obviously we want to delete out our original one as well. So you can see that script is much faster, but the one problem is we haven't been able to place these exactly where we want to place them. This is actually kind of just stuck them all an equal distance apart. So although it's faster, it's not always ideal. Like using the last technique, it allowed us to put one kind of either side here. And just bear in mind the last little thing with this, it can be worth going around your model and taking out any kind of loops that are not required, such like you might want to delete that loop, for example. You could get rid of some of these loops. If I select those two edges, hold Control and right click and go Edge Loop Utilities to Edge Loop and delete. Then you can just select one edge and hit G and it will delete it out. So again, and then just hit G and it will delete it out like so. So one edge and then G. Because I think up here I've got a slight little issue with a model where that actually needs to be joined up properly. So yeah, that's what's gone wrong there. So I'm going to pull that out. It's because I forgot to tick on close the model here. So I'm just going to make sure that that's all nice and straight. Do the same as we did before, discrete rotate, then pull that right into there. Go to vertex mode, select these two loops, and now if we hold shift, right click, merge vertices, merge verts. If that doesn't work, come into the options, and we probably just need to increase the tolerance. Say 1, and there we go, that's all nicely joined up. So yeah, that's why we had the issue with the, it wasn't the script's fault, it was actually the original model. So there we go, so that's how you create a, like an interior exposed pipe.